everyone. This is Jody Parker of Higher Living Journey, and I am coming to you live with today's thought. It is July 25th, 2018. And I have to admit, I'm a little nervous tonight because I am tackling a very controversial issue, and I'm trying to find a way to not make it so controversial. So bear with me because I'm a little bit nervous in talking, and I've noticed nobody's even watching yet, so we'll see who gets on. But if you're watching this as a replay, here we go. So I'm a mama bear. If you're a mama bear, give me a 1 in the comments. And as mama bears, there's nothing worse in the world than the way that we worry about our children. A parent's biggest fear is that something can happen to their child. And so because that's our biggest fear, it's really easy to manipulate our emotions around anything that could be a danger to our child. And I think that's kind of dangerous, because if we're coming from a place of fear because we're worried about our children, it's hard to see reason. It's hard to listen to two sides of a story. Our cognitive dissonance can come up really easy. And sometimes it's really important for us to be able to get past our cognitive dissonance so that we can get to truth. And so the topic I'm tackling tonight has a lot to do with that. And so here we go. First, I want to start by saying, because this is such a controversial topic, this is not a pro or anti post of any kind about where I'm going, because let's face it, I'm going to talk about vaccines tonight, and it's a hot button issue, and people get super emotional about it, and rightly so, because we all want to protect our kids. But in that, we lose the ability to have a conversation. And there's been some things in the news in the last week that it's really, really important that us as parents know, no matter what side we're on. And if anybody's wondering, personally, I think that my medical decisions need to be between myself and my doctor. And I'm going to leave that there, because medicine is not one size fits all, and it should never be treated as if it's one size fits all. And so it needs to be between a patient and their doctor. But what happened in the last week is really important for people to know, because I think it affects everybody's child, no matter what side of this argument is on. And I think it's really important that we know and understand what's happening. So today in the news, there's a really big news story about there's been a huge vaccine recall in China. They had some kind of contaminant that it wasn't totally clear to me exactly what happened, but there were concerns about injuries. They pulled everything off of the market, and it really made me think, because here in the United States, I'm going to give you a little bit of history. Back in the early 80s, there were lots and lots and lots of court cases where people who had been injured by vaccines took a pharmaceutical company to court, and more or less the pharmaceutical companies were losing their shirts when it came to vaccination. And everybody stopped making vaccines except for one company, and that company went to Congress and said, if you want us to continue making vaccines, then you have to give us immunity from prosecution, because we're losing our shirts, this isn't profitable. And at the time it was the DPT vaccine, which is no longer even given in the United States. But that was where the controversy was. So in 1986, Congress passed a law that made pharmaceutical companies 100% immune from any and all prosecution for anything having to do with their product. And that's kind of concerning to me. Like, I wouldn't want to use a car seat where the manufacturer wasn't liable for issues in the manufacturing of that product. But that's what happened, because it was the only way that pharmaceutical companies would agree to continue making vaccinations. And so in that law, they did a couple of things. They said, okay, Health and Human Services, because there's been issues, every 2 years we want you to do a vaccine safety study and look to make sure that they are safe, that they're getting safer, that we're going to not have these same issues that we had with this DPT vaccine. That was one thing they did. They made a vaccine court, which taxpayers pay for. So every vaccine has a 75-cent tax on it, and that goes straight to the vaccine court for people who are injured by vaccines. And right now, in the last 32 years, we're getting close to $4 billion in payouts for that particular thing. But that court isn't like a regular court where there's discovery and where they can subpoena records and things like that. There's no discovery in that court. And so once again, pharmaceutical companies kind of, are shielded from liability. And the last thing that law put into place was the VAERS database, the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. And all doctors are supposed to report suspected vaccine reactions to that system so that they can have long-term data on what's happening in the population in relation to vaccines. And studies show that somewhere between 1% and 10% of vaccine reactions are actually recorded. A lot of doctors don't even know that exists. So there hasn't been a real good follow-up with long-term studies because people are just not reporting it. So I've kind of laid it all out for you, right? So this thing in China happens, and it had me thinking, if that happened in the United States, if there was something that there was contamination, the manufacturer's not responsible, the people giving the vaccines are not responsible, the court has no discovery, and that concerns me. But here's the thing that really kind of put the nail on the head and why I decided to go live with this. Last week, RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., he went through the process to have records made public through Health and Human Services, HHS. And remember, they were supposed to be testing vaccines every other year to make sure that they were safe. And so he subpoenaed the records to find out what they had found in those studies. And it turns out in the last 32 years, no studies have been done. None. Hasn't been done. And that should be deeply concerning to everybody because the manufacturer is a for-profit company that is not liable for its products. The people giving it aren't liable for their products. There's nobody holding them responsible. And the government who took over the job of being that safety didn't do its job. And I think we need to be able to talk about that. But because this is such a controversial issue, people talk at each other. Oh, you're a Google doctor. Oh, you're hurting your baby. Oh, this, that, the other. Like, it gets really heated. We're all on the same side. We all want our kids safe. That's the key. And so the reason I wanted to go live with this is so that people know that that's what's happening. Because one of two things need to happen. Either Health and Human Services needs to do its job and do these safety studies and release them to the public so that we know, right? Because they say vaccines are safe and effective, but I can tell you, I'm a former television news producer. And I know for a fact that the television news is all about ratings, and they will do things to scare you because people who are scared are more likely to watch, and the more viewers they have, the better the ratings and the more advertising dollars that they can get. And about 70% of advertising dollars for television news comes from the pharmaceutical company. And when I was a television producer, I was told in no uncertain terms that we would not question the pharmaceutical companies in any way. And that if I did, because I wanted to do a segment at the time, it was 2000, I wanted to do a segment on thimerosal, the pros and cons, both sides, because it was a really heated debate at the time. And I was told that if I did that, I would be fired. So for sure, it's not coming out in the news. And so safe and effective, is it? Do we know? The studies weren't done. And if it comes out they're safe and effective, awesome, that's great, right? Because that's keeping all of our kids safe. But if there is a problem, if there are contaminants, we know for sure all the childhood vaccines have glyphosate in them. Every single one tested positive for glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in the herbicide Roundup. It's not good for you. It shouldn't be injected into the body. So we need that to happen. So either they need to do those studies or the law needs to be overturned that is giving pharmaceutical companies immunity so that they have to be liable for their product. Because in order to keep a check on this gigantic corporation, there's got to be some checks and balances because that's where safety comes from. So no matter which side of this very controversial debate you're on, I think that we can all agree that it's really important that checks are constantly done along the way, because some people will tell you that science is settled, but it was just 3 years ago that they figured out that the brain had a lymph system in it and it was connected to your immune system. That was just 3 years ago. For most of that time, they thought that it wasn't connected, that it was protected from the rest of the body, and they found that not to be true. And so it's really important when you're giving a child as many shots as they get. I believe it's 49 antigens, like 29 shots by the time they're 5, that we know for sure, right? We got to know for sure. So that's why I went live. And if you want to share this, I'm really nervous to even say that you should share this, because I don't want this to become a debate, and I don't want people to attack me because I put this in this kind of connect the dots format. I just want people to know, because I want every parent out there to feel really secure that you're doing the very best that you can for your child, because it's important for us to be advocates for ourselves and for our children, because we know our own bodies and our children better than anyone else, and we need to be able to talk to each other and to our doctors about that without fear of being ridiculed or causing a fight. So thank you for watching tonight. If you want to share this, go ahead. That makes me nervous. If there are any rude comments on this, I will delete them, because that is not what this post is about on either side. So if you do have something to say, please be kind, please be respectful, and I will see you guys all tomorrow night. Thanks for listening.